So today, I thought we should react together as a family, as a YouTube family, to this clip. And it was incoming freshman Congressmember Rabb, who this channel supports because Congressmember Rabb, or incoming Congressmember Rabb, supports the one-state solution with equal rights from the river to the sea, as we covered here before, and the right of return of Palestinian refugees and their descendants. So he gets the coveted neoliberal tears endorsement. Go, Chris. And he was interviewed by another friend of the show, Bestie, Krystal Ball, about what he thinks about, first of all, how he would serve in Congress, whether he would endorse Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker of the House. He answered that question. I have lots of thoughts about that, but also Bestie, my bestie, Krystal Ball, asked him what his analysis is of Graham Plattner and what his reaction is to some of the criticism Graham Plattner is facing. So let's hear it from Chris, incoming freshman Congress member and one state solution supporter, and endorsed by neoliberal tears, Chris Rabb. Let's go.
So to discuss the future of the Democratic Party this morning, we are very fortunate to be joined by Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Rabb. He is the Democratic nominee for Pennsylvania's 3rd Congressional District. Welcome, sir, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. We followed your election with interest. You had a lot of powerful forces going against you, a lot of interesting things that happened there. What do you think is the message that your pretty, clear-cut, fairly overwhelming victory in this primary sends to the party?
Yeah, it was a stunning defeat of entrenched politics here in Philadelphia, in the bluest congressional district in the entire nation, where we had not had an open seat, no incumbent on the ballot, first time in 35 years, against a political class that was united against this progressive. And it was a 15-point win. And I think it's a resounding affirmation that organized people beat organized money every time.
And you seem to be taking a very, I don't know that it's a novel approach, but you've gone out of your way to go and campaign for other candidates, both incumbents who you support, like Summer Lee, who you're likely to serve with in Congress, others who, are challenging incumbents and are running sort of upstart campaigns across the country. Why has that been important to you? What role do you feel like you are serving and that you want to serve?
Well, to be clear, I'm a movement candidate, and that means a movement has allowed me to have a collective victory. And that means that whatever political capital, whatever momentum I have as the presumptive next member of Congress for the city of Philadelphia means I got to pay it forward. And it's also in my best interest. I want to come in with this largest, oldest progressive class of members in U.S. history. So the only way you can do that is by showing up for others who are viable, substantive candidates. And I'm really excited about our not just taking back the House. I mean, there's
sorry. So just right off the bat, I just have to react to, I feel like my past self from 2019 came to warn me, I don't know, in this, as he was talking, because I just remembered how many people, we had a class of Democratic Congress members coming in 2020 when after Biden won, who all supported, there were more than, I think, 30 of them who supported Medicare for all, higher minimum wage, public, list codifying Roe v. Wade, that was even much more than 30. And Democrats got a majority in the House. Democrats got a majority in the Senate and the presidency. And what did we get? Bupkis. We got bupkis. We got excuses. We got a slap in the face, a double slap in the face, a triple slap in the face. And as always, we also got Cobra subsidies. Nancy Pelosi's one trademark invention, how to funnel money to insurance companies and call it helping the people. So I feel for Chris. I think he is sincere in wanting to achieve these progressive goals that people need. I think I covered when I talked about Chris, besides supporting the one-state solution, which I'll keep mentioning because that's great. I'm so glad he's joining Rashida in that. He also supported abolishing ICE back in 2017 when he was a state representative. I think Democrats are so not going to abolish ICE. I mean, there's another article I think I referred to in the stream that had to do with Chris, that quoted Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, blue state, mind you. And Chris was saying, no, we're not going to abolish ICE. Like, he went to an abolish ICE rally, Chris Murphy, not Chris Rabb, Chris Murphy. And Chris Murphy said to the people protesting, we're not going to abolish ICE. We're just going to retrain ICE. Like, why can't you? And then he admonished the protesters. And he said, like, why can't you guys get behind my triangulated, perfect, centrist middle ground solution? So I don't think a junior Congress member, as much as I value Chris Rabb, and I think he's legit, as legit as can get, I think first of all, junior Congress members or freshman Congress members are never taken seriously by the party. They are usually relegated to the sidelines of the sidelines. Right? Like, the Democratic Party still operates on a system of seniority. And even in a world where Representative Rabb was a senior member of the Democratic Party, he would still be marginalized because people like Hakeem Jeffries are not interested in changing anything except voting for more what? Cobra subsidies. That's right. You know it.
The big difference between having a Democratic majority and having a party that knows how to lead in the belly of the beast and in the most adverse times in modern history. Those are two different things on the Venn diagram of national politics. So I want to make sure that we have a critical subset of Democrats who are going to vote in furtherance of shared prosperity and fighting fascism and taxing the ultra wealthy and having structural changes that the base is demanding, but corporate Democrats refuse to acknowledge or commit to.
You were critical of Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, which became a campaign issue, actually, for you. One of your opponents had some pretty interesting things to say about that. But I'm just curious, since you have won the Democratic nomination, just so people know, Pennsylvania's 3rd congressional district is one of the most Democratic in the entire country. So very much expected that you will be sworn in with the next class of members of Congress. How has the party responded to your victory? Have you had any outreach from the sort of establishment leaders of the Democratic Party?
Oh, absolutely. They've all reached out to me quickly. And I appreciate that outreach. We got to build relationships. We got to figure out how we can work together. But I would push back a little bit. I wouldn't say I was critical of Hakeem Jeffries per se, but it's just when someone tries to...
He just criticized corporate Democrats, right? In the previous answer. And now he's taking it back and saying, well, I wouldn't criticize Hakeem Jeffries per se, and we have to build relationships. When people tell you they're trying to build relationships, we know what that means. It means holding back criticism publicly, right? Because the one thing narcissists and members of Congress who are narcissists, the one thing they care about is their media image. If you criticize them publicly, mind you, they don't mind criticism in private. They hear it all the time from other members. But the way you step off track is when you start criticizing corporate Democrats by name, and I mean specifically Hakeem Jeffries. When you start going after them in the media, that's when they put a target on your back. That's when they start marginalizing you, sabotaging you, basically doing the thing of like, I guess the physical analogy to this is like if someone like puts their foot up so that you can trip over them. That's what happens. So already Chris is thinking very sweetly, very, I think he's sincere and good-hearted, I do. But he thinks that by holding off criticism of Hakeem Jeffries publicly, it's going to win him some brownie points, or maybe he'll be able to advance a progressive legislation because he avoids criticizing Hakeem Jeffries publicly. And that's not politics. Politics is about, whatever, like, what do I know? But my version of progressive politics, or if you are serious about getting meaningful change from the Democratic Party, which is going to fight you tooth and nail. You have to embarrass people in the media. You have to use the media to your advantage. It's your only advantage as a freshman Congress member, in a way. You're not going to get a good committee assignment, trust me. And even if you did, you'd be marginalized anyway. You can't force concessions out of Hakeem Jeffries by being nice. The only thing you're building here, you can build relationship with Hakeem Jeffries. That's great. He's not going to give you anything for that. Anyway.
Say, will you support him? My answer is, what is any candidate for majority leader, for Speaker of the House? How is their leadership going to resonate with how I got elected to office, and who else is running? I don't know who's running. So, I think that's important. It's not about the individual. It's about who seeks that position to what end. And that has to be aligned with the electorate and the constituents I seek to represent on January 3rd. But I also know that it's a body of 435. You need 218 votes to get anything done. And we have to figure out what we can agree on, and the things we can't agree on.
This strategy that I believe Congressmember Rabb is sincere about, of just like trying to find common ground with the 435 members and you know what that's going to lead, where that's going to land you in terms of policy, concrete policy that you're all going to agree about? You know what I'm going to say? Cobra subsidies. You're definitely not getting a tax on the wealthy. That's for fucking sure. Playing hardball, a version of what I'm, I guess, talking about, it would have been to answer Krystal's question. You're a junior Congress member anyway. You can take risks at this point. They're not going to primary you next month. You have 2 years. Playing hardball would have been to use your opportunity in this interview, which, trust me, Hakeem Jeffries' aides are going to listen to. That's what Congress members do. They spend their entire day on Congress members, and their aides and their interns and all these people, all of their entire circle that gets paid to help them. All they focus on is, what did people say about me in the media? And, putting people on a nice list and a shit list. That's what Hakeem Jeffries is doing right now. So Congressmember Rabb could have used this opportunity to say something to the extent of, no, I would never support Hakeem Jeffries for House Speaker. He was House Speaker last time, and we got nothing out of it. Actually, we got a Trump presidency out of it in Republican majorities in the House and the Senate. Democrats failed people. We need new leadership. I would vote for anyone but Jeffries. I would vote for Summer Lee for House Speaker, who is from my state of the Commonwealth. I think Pennsylvania is the Commonwealth. I would vote for her as House Speaker. What, does Summer Lee want to be House Speaker? Absolutely fucking not. But throw her name out there. Make Hakeem Jeffries sweat a little bit. You're already conceding. You're not going to build a relationship with Hakeem fucking Jeffries. He's not your friend. These people are not your fucking friends. My God. They would throw you under the bus in a millisecond, no matter how nice you are to them in the media. And Republicans have no problem throwing their own people under the bus and then forgiving them 2 days later. Because you know why? Because it's called politics. And you don't take things personally. You're either standing for the things you want to achieve, or you play nice and try to be friends with everybody and bake cookies. And that's going to get you bupkis. Bupkis. Capiche? I still don't know which language capiche comes from, but anyway.
Those of us who are left of the party to move the party forward. And those are things that have to happen simultaneously.
So you'd say you're not a no on Hakeem Jeffries as potential speaker, but you're a we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I need to know who's running, right? I mean, the reality is he could be the only one on the ballot, right? So it's a non-issue there. But that's not, to me, that is not as important as how we hold whomever is running and whoever wins to account. And that's not based on my personal preferences or
I would only vote for Hakeem Jeffries as House Speaker if he forces a bill on the floor in support of a public healthcare option, a Medicare for all option. There. Is that so hard? Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard?
It's based on how I got elected. If those leaders work for the members put them in those positions of power. How do we hold them to account? And how do they express their willingness to do the things that a larger subset of Democrats in Congress want? And, that is going to be a back and forth. We also have to understand, too, that for the folks we may not prefer in leadership or in office at all, but who are going to be there serving in whatever capacity, for those of us who are there with them, our responsibility between election cycles is holding our own colleagues to account and moving them towards the moral center, not the political center. And that is something that people should want their newly elected incumbents to do, because listen, we have a clear villain here. It's Trump, it's MAGA extremism, it's fascism, it's late stage capitalism, it's any number of things. But we can't make our colleagues the enemy. They may be not on the same page with us, but it's our responsibility to make them.
We can't make our colleagues the enemy, even if they're corporate Democrats, which you rightly and correctly ran against a month ago. He's already talking like he's been in Congress for 50 years. Chris.
Do better. And we have seen some progress when we have, not myself quite yet, but others in Congress get some of their colleagues to stop taking APAC money. That's a win. And we need to respect that. And we also need to understand that that comes with certain risks for the people who have been funded by folks we don't.
I'm really sick of this argument. Not taking APAC money, but still taking J Street money, the way Bernie Sanders does. Or worse, actually, not taking APAC money, but still being a Zionist, like AOC is. AOC is a Zionist. That's almost worse. You're trying to triangulate Zionism into, okay, I as a member of Congress will still be a Zionist. I just won't take money from this one lobbying group. But I'll take money from all of these other lobbying groups, just not that one. And I'll still be a Zionist who supports a two-state solution, blah, 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 blah. So what if you don't take APAC money? You're still doing their bidding for fucking free. AOC voted to conflate for a resolution conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. She doesn't take APAC money. She did it for free. Not taking APAC money is not a win on its own unless it's followed with fucking policy. Like supporting equal rights from the river to the sea and the one-state solution and the right of return of Palestinian refugees and their descendants, which you, Chris, said in your platform that you support. How are you going to get the other members of Congress like Hakeem Jeffries, who does take APAC money, who nobody primaried this year, or nobody is primarying this year? How are you going to get him to move? By asking nicely? Is that the plan?
Believe they should be funded by, which also means we need to support them if they're truly understanding of why that dynamic is so problematic.
I wanted to get you to weigh in on what's going on right now with Graham Plattner up in Maine, because I do think it has some important fissures here in terms of the direction of the Democratic Party. His ideological program and yours is not exactly the same, but you're more or less in the same lane and have, similar views of the world, and certainly, have been clear-cut, clear-throated opponents of genocide, of AIPAC funding, and the influence of the Israel lobby. He has faced a number of allegations, some of which he's, acknowledged that he had a very rough go of it after serving in the military, that he had a drinking problem, he has PTSD, that he engaged
Bestie. Hi. Bestie. You know who has PTSD more than Plattner? The way he says he does? The families of the people he killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, which he called an adventure, the most enjoyable experience of his lifetime. I bet I would highlight their pain and their suffering over his.
In toxic behavior in relationships, other aspects of which he's completely denied. There was an allegation from a Republican political operative that he had grabbed her by the shoulders forcefully, that he had yanked her by the hand out of a cab, that he had put her arm behind her back and pushed her inside of a room. Again, she says this occurred. He denies it, and the New York Times was unable to confirm it. I wonder what you make of the allegations and also what has been seen as extreme scrutiny into his life that doesn't seem to be matched with a level of scrutiny into others who do not challenge the oligarchy and do not challenge, AIPAC and the status quo on Israel.
What is this? What are you doing? What are you doing? Is this the DNC media hour? What the fuck is this? Is this the Democratic Operatives channels? Do you think people are too stupid to understand what you're doing when you frame that question that way? It's so gross. You're a real journalist. You are. I know you are. I know you are because I admire your work. This is pathetic. This is insulting to my intelligence and to everybody, every other writer who loves you or loved you. You're calling us stupid. Do you think everybody's going after Graham Plattner because he's anti-oligarch and anti-Israel? What's your response to the fact that there are allegations from a Republican operative that the New York Times couldn't corroborate? Do you think people are stupid? Do you think that little of us? Like, I'm actually offended. I'm actually offended. Either you really think that little of your viewers, which I hope is not the case. I don't know what else they would be, actually. Do you think you can get away with a loaded framing of a question that's so biased? It's actually repulsive. For someone who left MSNBC and criticizes them for being so overtly pro-Democrat, this is too much for MSNBC. Or whatever they call themselves now, MS Now. This is too much for them. They would call you after that and be like, hey, tone it down. The partisan bullshit, tone it the fuck down. I hate this. I hate this because it's so transparent. It hurts your credibility, at least in my eyes. Maybe not the audience that has become Breaking Points' customer base. But this is really embarrassing. Just ask questions that are like straight. Or, you know what? Don't listen to me.
As aggressively as he does.
Yeah, this is challenging for me because I felt that folks who have been identified as hard-scrabbled, populist, left of center, white guys get far more leeway than folks like me, Black progressives. And that's a double standard that is largely based on race. And I think that's a conversation we need to have. If I had some problematic tattoo that related to white folk, I don't think I would be viable, even in the majority Black district, because I think the money would not be there for me to run the campaign I needed. I think there's a clear double standard that the left has to talk about as it relates to our racial politics and what is acceptable. And, I also have PTSD. I have actual PTSD. And I also have political PTSD because in this state, we elected a fake populist in Fetterman. And when I feel Fetterman vibes, I get very, very nervous. I don't know Plattner. I've not followed his race closely. I've had.
All right, Congressmember Rabb, you have me on board again. Total agreement. props to you for calling out the double standard from mostly almost 99% white progressive commentators who treat Plattner like a king, refuse to criticize him for reasons we're going to remind ourselves of in a few minutes, and for bringing up the Fetterman political PTSD, which is a brilliant framing on your part. Yeah, you can run a campaign on saying the right things. It doesn't mean you're gonna actually follow through on them. What as soon as Fetterman got into office, he changed every position he ever had and became essentially a Republican. I'm sure I don't need to throw out my conspiracy theories out here, but yeah, what's going to stop Plattner from doing a heel turn? Exactly. We should be more critical. We should scrutinize these candidates more. Just because they say what sounds like the right thing doesn't mean they're honest or they mean it. And actually looking at their past behavior is the only way we can sort of assess whether they're serious or they're just lying out of all of their holes, right? So props to you, and I'm in complete agreement.
A grueling 10-month campaign I'm just coming out of. So now I'm really seeing what's on the landscape of opportunity in the House and the Senate. But I do think we need to hold space for folks with genuine grievances, and we need to have a process for those folks who are expressing legitimate concerns about the behaviors and choices of candidates, but to do so in a way that is in the spirit of restorative justice, as opposed to the spirit of the politics of personal destruction. And I think that is something that is really, really necessary, because what we don't want to do is to silence or erase the voices of people who have felt real harm, particularly women. But we also have to make sure that we do not feel that there's a class of candidate that has to be perfect. There are no perfect candidates.
Okay, before the perfect candidates part, I just want to commend him for actually taking people's concerns about Plattner seriously instead of doing what Krystal just did and dismissing them in the middle of the question. Because she's so committed to shilling for Plattner and helping Democrats recapture the Senate like a good little girl working for the Democratic Party. I think props to Chris Rabb for actually saying, no, we need to take people's concerns seriously. And actually, I think if the Democratic Party tries to sweep what they always do, try to sweep concerns under the rug, pretend they don't exist, delegitimize people's concerns, delegitimize people who make those concerns and say, those are Republican operatives, those are bad people trying to hurt our candidate Plattner because he's anti-oligarch and anti-Israel, and you go and vote for him. You know what those people are not going to do in November? Vote for fucking Plattner. Now look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Maine is totally so fucking on board, in which case, why are you even delegitimizing the criticism? Are you scared that someone in Maine is going to change their mind because of someone like neoliberal theorists saying, hey, Plattner could end up being exactly like fucking Fetterman, who ran on all the right things and all the progressive stuff that everybody loves? You can't silence criticism and expect people to swallow it up and go vote for someone on election day. And again, it could be that there's no one critical of Plattner in the whole state of Maine. Actually, I think someone from Maine commented on the video I made about Plattner, so that's crazy. And they were very supportive. So, maybe it could be true that no one in Maine is critical of Plattner, in which case that criticism should not scare you to the point where you lie about it or delegitimize anyone who makes any criticism of Plattner. I just feel like it's like stifling real discussion that should be had about candidates. Like, we should be scrutinized, especially when they're still running, because you know what happens after they're elected? They're not accountable until 6 years later, when you can maybe primary them, like John Fetterman. But your only leverage with these pieces of shit, who I do call politicians, is before they're in office, not after.
And we also have to make sure that those candidates acknowledge their faults. Everyone has them, and how we work through them. So if he said, I have a, I understand when someone says, I made a bad choice as a young man and I was struggling with addiction and that sort of thing. We need to hold space for that. But you also may have intervening years or decades where you did not do any further introspection about what you've done, so that you can feel a sense of atonement that other people can value as legitimate long before you ever considered public office. We can hold those two truths at the same time.
So you don't believe he's done sufficient atonement to have sought public office?
I don't know. I don't know. But I think that is something that needs to be addressed before November 3rd. Absolutely.
Isn't that up to the voters to decide?
Well, it's not just voters who decide who's a viable candidate. Viability is also based on how much money you raise, what your platform is, how you come into, are you a movement candidate, or are you a candidate who says the right things in the right political moment to be aligned with a movement that shows considerable political power? I don't know. I've not watched his candidacy that closely to answer those questions, but those are conversations that need to happen within community and not on social media.
So he, just to be clear, he was a movement organizer.
Mr. Congressmember Rabb, I appreciate you. I would only take issue with this idea that those criticisms need to be aired out in private and not on social media, because the implication is that Plattner shouldn't address those criticisms publicly, or that it should be kind of like a private Democrat thing, where grievances are aired out and resolved and everybody holds hands after. I think that's skeevy, because it's away from the public and people who might vote Democrat or not. I'm not a fan of doing things in private, because the way narcissists especially act in private, if Plattner is a narcissist, which I'm not alleging allegedly, but if he was, he would act very differently in private than he would in public. In public is where you actually can assess how someone reacts to things, whether they're sincere or insincere. So I wouldn't say that those conversations should happen away from social media. What's the threat? What's the threat? People with thoughts and feelings having reactions to someone who might hold one of the most powerful positions in the world for 6 years? No, they deserve to be scrutinized publicly. They signed up for this.
In Maine, which is how he came to the attention of people to encourage him to run for office. The primary is today in Maine. His, opponent, main opponent, was the former governor, or current governor, Janet Mills, who has suspended her campaign. She is not particularly ideologically aligned with you. She's much more supportive of our status quo with regard to Israel. She has, done things like veto tax hikes on the rich.
And we looked, sorry, Bestie, didn't mean to interrupt you there. But we did look at Plattner's website, and his section on Gaza was 3 sentences long. His entire section on Palestine was 3 sentences long, and said, yes, Gaza was going through a genocide. You know what it didn't say? Anything about the one-state solution or equal rights from the river to the sea. You know what it didn't say? Anything about the right of return for Palestinian refugees. Right, Sam? Right, Sam? Sorry, he jumped on my chair, but he had to weigh in. So presenting Plattner, and also Krystal called him an anti-Zionist in one of her tweets from, I think, yesterday, which pisses me off, because anti-Zionism has a very clear, short, and very clear, succinct definition that Graham Plattner never identified as. So presenting him as this like anti-Israel hero when he never said anything of the sort. He never said he was anti-Zionist. I'd love to see it. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Show me where he said he was anti-Zionist. I'd support it. Show me where he supports the right of return of Palestinian refugees and their descendants to their original homes and the one-state solution. Your job as a journalist is to hold these candidates to a higher standard than your wishful fucking thinking. You get paid for this. And instead of working for the people, you're working for candidates who, for all we know, could be lying pieces of shit. Are you working for the party or are you working for your viewers? You do have to decide at some point. You can't be both.
In the state of Maine, she's had an adversarial relationship with labor unions. You know, if you were looking at this race, like, do you think that voters would be better off choosing her because she's had fewer personal controversies?
What is this fucking straw man? She already suspended her campaign, Janet Mills. So now you're coming at Chris because he criticized your one shot at retaking the Senate. You're saying, oh, so would you support a Republican? Would you support Janet Mills? Isn't he better than the alternative Janet Mills? He's already the nominee. She suspended her campaign. Why are you so allergic to criticism? Why are you more committed to helping? You're not helping Democrats win, by the way. I don't think you are. We'll see. We'll see in November, I guess. I don't know. Could be wrong.
Then Graham Plattner?
No, but it's a matter of how we hold the people who we would prefer in office to account. I think that's the issue, right? Because sometimes we vote for people. Well, sometimes we vote.
What do you mean by that? Look at Fetterman. He ran on all the right buzzwords. And then he gets elected, and guess what? He can tell you to fuck off. He can not you. He can tell the left to fuck off, progressives to fuck off, and become the most disgusting creature that ever walked. Like, why are you playing stupid? You know exactly what Chris is saying. And it's a concern that broadly the left shares and that you never air out. That's going to have consequences for your beloved party.
For people, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we vote for the person who we have a better chance of holding to account and making sure that the candidate functions similarly once in office, right? Because it's very easy, particularly in these moments, to campaign as a progressive. It's radically harder to govern as a progressive. And I speak as someone who is currently in legislative session here in Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg, in the largest full-time state legislature in the country. It is very hard to govern as a progressive. And so how we hold anyone to account, myself included, is by making sure that they fulfill their promises that they made in the campaign, on the campaign trail, and making sure that they will sit down in earnest with people who have genuine concerns and priorities that may not be fully aligned by the time someone wins their primary.
One more on this, because you mentioned you got Fetterman vibes from Plattner. I want to explore that a little bit more. So Fetterman and Plattner have actually been going back and forth with each other. Fetterman's been attacking him. Graham Plattner has been responding, I think, called Fetterman an asshole. Let's go ahead and take a listen to a little bit of how John Fetterman went after Graham Plattner.
For me, as a Democrat, I'm never going to carry water for a guy that shooting innocent civilians. Have no problem posing in a towel at a disgusting website that consistently has serious problems about that kinds of depravity.
So I wonder if you could respond there to Senator Fetterman, but also I am curious for you to elaborate when you say that Plattner, you're getting Fetterman vibes from him. What is it specifically that you're responding to there?
No, I wasn't specifically referring to Plattner regarding Fetterman vibes, but here in Pennsylvania, I get that when people say, oh, I like what you're saying, you know, you seem to be right on all the issues, but how do I know you're not going to be the next Fetterman? So that actually applies to me as well. When people are very traumatized in Pennsylvania and beyond, when they think that they're electing a progressive populist and they get something very different. I don't know Plattner enough to weigh in on that specifically, but I can tell you that, you know, I don't know how many black folk you're polling or talking to, but all I can say is we need to have more conversations about what accountability looks like for folks who are running to the left, and making sure that we understand the intersectional nature of progressivism, and ensure that folks' racial politics.
Sorry, I think he said intersectional, but just in case, yeah, you missed it. Yeah,
are aligned with the populist politics that are trending so well these days. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's well understood. So last question for you, Representative, is, when/if, but looking like when you get to Washington, what will be some of your first priorities you would like to work on there? How will you operate in a way that you think is different from how a lot of other members operate?
Sure. Well, just to be clear, I'm not an optimist by nature, but there's no Republican on the ballot, and there are more raccoons than Republicans in my district. So I think it's safe to say that I'll be in Congress on January 3rd. So we have to de-Trumpify Washington, D.C. All the choices, appointments, cuts, all of the structural fissures and such, we need to do what we can to restore or prepare for their restoration. And we also need to build a bold vision in a post-Trump world. And, frankly, that may happen long before 2 years. What does that look like? So he's been a wonderful villain, but, people are struggling. They need to know what Democrats envision for a society with people closest to the pain struggling like never before, and making sure that we are clear with that message and consistent, and make sure that we hit all of those people, particularly folks who, generally speaking, the Democratic Party counts out and disregards, who really should be centered. The people closest to the pain, young people, poor people, Black folk. I'm going to keep bringing up Black folk. If we do not take care of Black women, we will lose, and we do not deserve to lead if we do not understand the primacy of Black women. When we help Black women, we help everybody.
Future Congressman Chris Rabb, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hey, if you want.
One thing I wanted to share, I think when Chris said that there are more raccoons than Republican voters in his district, I wanted to share this video that I took a little bit earlier. I screenshotted it from a TikTok account called A Damn Good Coffee.
This is Bean.
Okay, so here's what's going on here. There's I believe this person is a wildlife rehabber, so he goes live on TikTok every night. I believe he also sells coffee to help fund his help for wildlife. But he goes live every day, and he provides food and water to raccoons. And so I just wanted to share this video to recommend, this is something I watched him recommend once, is that if you live next to wildlife, or if there are raccoons in your neighborhood, it would be, or opossums or any kind of wildlife, if you can leave a bowl of water outside, it really, really, really helps them, because sometimes wildlife doesn't have access to fresh water. So I just wanted to share a little bit of this.
Okay, cool, Casey. Here, we'll throw some back there for them. But yeah, we move.
And look at their bench. They have a little bench to eat. It's so cute. They're so cute.
Moved the rug a little closer, and then that way I can still throw stuff down to like get to the mamas and babies, but then not as much will fall through. So, oh, you have a 3-legged one. You named it Tripod. That's so cute. So yeah, Monroe's not here yet. There we go. And yeah, I agree. They're so cute. And then, really, Bubba? How about you look behind you? Bubba. She's picky about what peanuts she'll eat. So if I wait, she'll eat the other ones. But if she has her way... Good grief. Girl, you are so spoiled. But yeah, if she has her way... See, she wants me to put more. Here, back up. Back up, Mama. You gotta back up. Here, there you go.
So yeah, Chris, if you're watching this, sorry, I have to laugh. Of course he's not. Chris, if you are, if someone sends this to you, please, because you mentioned there are more raccoons in your district than Republican voters, if you can just leave out a bowl of water for them every night, it's not hard, right? Just fill up some water. It really, really, really helps them, especially in the hot summers. Look at them; they're precious. They're so cute. We have to protect them. I do that every night. I hope you join me if you're one of the 5 people who watch this. I believe I went from 4 to 5, which is crazy. I don't know what to do with all this fame. Anyway, that's my raccoon PSA. I had to share this, and this account is on TikTok. It's called A Damn Good Coffee, and he shares his raccoon family and showing their life and sharing it with the world, which we are so lucky to be able to partake in. So thank you, A Damn Good Coffee.